Hey, so I wanted to make a quick video today that might be helpful to other people um, out there. And it deals with a really important topic. It's a topic that every human being on the face of the planet faces throughout life, all throughout life. And it deals with, I mean, it almost feels silly and cliche to even talk about this topic because it's so prevalent and obvious. And it's also one of the most unsolved things in life, and really we spend most of our lives working on this problem all throughout all the phases of existence. And so, okay, what's the problem? So without further ado, I mean, the problem is it deals with philosophy, and philosophy in the context of how do we live a good life? How do we find purpose in life? How do we find happiness and joy in life? This is an interesting intellectual topic. And it's a topic, of course, me, like every other human on the planet, has spent a lot of time trying to figure out as I navigate this world and this lifetime. And so I'm 39 now. I have a bucket of learnings on the journey thus far, and I'm sure I'm going to develop more learnings moving forward. But I think some of the observations I've made could be helpful to others. And so I'll share that. I'll share that now. I made a little list for myself, so let me look at it real quick. All right. So the first set of things I want to talk about is around purpose. So we hear this common saying, "Oh, well, we got to find our purpose." You'll hear some of the optimistic nihilists say, "Oh, well, we can," or the existentialists say, "Oh, we just have to define our purpose, and then it's okay, and it's all relative, and all purposes are equal, etc." So there's a lot of common wisdom, and I think that there's nuances that I feel like I've come upon and have observed that hasn't really been that's been incredibly helpful to me in how I live my life that I don't think people talk about enough. And I think the key the key principle that's nuanced around this general topic is what I've found and what I'm observing in my life is that senses of purpose emerges from how you choose to deliberately spend your time, period. So purpose isn't something that you identify and it's your purpose and you go after it. We do these things in life, right? Let's bucket it into two categories. There's the things we do that we didn't necessarily choose to do, or we're not doing deliberately. That's one bucket. And there's another bucket of things that we do deliberately choose to do. And one observation I've made is when you start just doing things you are deliberate about and you have chosen, a sense of purpose emerges. So the purpose doesn't come first, and then you do the things aligned with your purpose. The purpose emerges from deliberately doing something that you choose. And so that's really important, right? Because it changes the way you approach things, at least on this journey of life. Like, all you have to do is identify something that you choose to do, which we do all the time, and acknowledge the things that we're choosing and not choosing. And then a sense of purpose will emerge as long as we stay on it and we perceive that we're making progress towards a goal. Purpose is this, it's almost a sensation that hits you, and it creates well-being. So I think that's a really important mental model that I've used for a couple years now. It's just acknowledging that I can't wait for a purpose to dawn on me. I have to just be deliberate and choose to do things, and then purpose will emerge and arise. That's huge. And, in a lot of ways it does. And implicit in that is some of this existential relativist insight where I don't think it matters what it is. I don't think it matters what you choose. Some people might choose to spend a lot of time with their children and deliberately get involved in things with their kids, and a sense of purpose will emerge from that. Other people will choose to start a business and will actively make progress on starting that business, and a sense of purpose will emerge. Some people will choose to write a book, and then a sense of purpose emerges. And it actually doesn't necessarily matter what you choose. Let yourself choose, though. So it has to be something that you want to do, or and something that you're deliberately assigning your efforts on, not being compelled or obligate through obligation, spending time on it. And that's, they're not being compelled in a way where you would have otherwise not chosen it, might be a little bit more precise way to talk about that. Now, there's an interesting corollary that might be related to this, right? And so we talk about purposefulness, and another way you may be able to use this mental model is to think about the corollary, which it may be, and I've observed good evidence for this, just personal evidence, that meaninglessness may emerge from spending time on things you didn't deliberately choose to do. I mean, there's this book, Man's Search for Meaning. I haven't read it, but I heard a story about the bad guys. It's sort of depressing. I don't even want to mention the search topic area. Google it if you want to know what the book's about. But let's say the bad guys in this book would tell these imprisoned people, what I want you to do is move those 100 pounds of sacks of potatoes. I can't remember the details, from here to over there. And now I want you to move that 100 pounds of potatoes back to where it was. And it was a means of some kind of psychological torture, right? And because you're forcing people to do meaningless work against their will. They didn't choose to do it. They're not deliberately choosing to do it. And that brings a sense of suffering that could be one of the most probably painful sources of malaise, that kind of high effort against your choice, and completely pointless. And so that could be a corollary. And so maybe it's interesting to then map how we spend our time in that spectrum. We're on one end of the spectrum. You didn't choose it. You're not deliberate about it. You're doing it. And on one end of the spectrum, you've made thoughtful choice and deliberation in doing it. And perhaps this is a spectrum, and perhaps we can map the things we do throughout the day into that spectrum to get a sense of, to maybe get an understanding or an internal awareness around our sense of well-being as we go through our days, right? So that's one of the biggest observations. And really, okay, the meaningless piece aside, that could be, I don't want to distract from the key point, which is that a sense of purpose emerges, right? It's not gotten ahead of time, and then you all things are well. In my observation, it emerges from being deliberate and having choice and making progress. And I'll talk a little bit more about progress. Okay, so that's some of the key observations about purpose. Another thing I want to talk about real quick is happiness or well-being. Well-being, like, what is that, right? Like, where does that come from? So, and there's a couple places that I think matter in the human experience so far for me that I can really tease into. After the, I mean, I'm sure I'm going to discover more, but right now, if I was to try to crystallize it in 4 points, 3 points, and then one additional point, is that the sensation, first of all, well-being, even the more meaningful one, of course, there's a hedonistic notion of well-being. I'm eating a lot of cake and it feels good. I'm taking some drugs, I'm drinking some drinks. And so there's that. That's one category. I don't even know what the scientists call it. Let's call it hedonistic. But then there's another category that's related to self-actualization, the sense of well-being, that's like more transcendent. Like, let's call that a more transcendent sense of well-being. Well, I'm talking about the transcendent category. And I feel like one thing that I've observed is the sensation of making progress toward a goal is where a lot of well-being comes from, the sensation, the experience. Oh, and I mentioned this distinction between hedonistic and transcendent well-being because both of them are ephemeral. Both of them are transient, right? So because I think there's this common wisdom where it's like, oh, that higher level of well-being is just the state of enlightenment we achieve and we feel good forever when we do that transcendent. But that's not the case. It's actually ephemeral. So it wanes over time. But one really important source that generates that in how we live our lives is just making progress toward a goal. And of course, a purposeful goal, as we've defined purpose previously as choice and deliberation, making purpose, right? So just feeling that you're making progress toward that generates a relatively sustained sense of well-being. However, if you stop, that well-being will wane. And unfortunately, our capacities to remember is not sufficient for generating well-being. So if we remembered we made a lot of progress last year, that doesn't necessarily, it's not a very potent source of getting well-being now. It's like we have to, it's a practice. This kind of like this source of well-being, and actually all of these are practices. So you have to practice progress toward a purposeful goal to get that sense of well-being, and it's continual. So it's a hamster wheel. Life is a hamster wheel, right? I mean, it's a hamster wheel that we just run on. I mean, and I have this, like, the foundations of my philosophy is optimistic nihilism, right? Like, I feel like we live this life once, and then we just need to try to live our best lives, right? And let the purpose emerge from what you choose to do. Okay, so it's a practice. It's my point. A practice of that sensation of progress towards a goal. So that's one source. Another source, so progress. Another source that I've observed is enhanced capability, and that's also ephemeral, right? I'll give you an example. Well, what is enhanced capability? So think about it as leveling up. When you level up, you feel great. Oh, I can do this now. That's so cool. I have this new ability, or I have this new tool that's going to make my life easier. I'll give you some concrete examples. I'll do something trivial, like when you get a new backpack, a really nice new backpack. It's got all the pockets. It's big, fits the laptop perfectly. It's got this thing and that thing, water bottle holder, whatever. You get a very nice new backpack and you feel good. Maybe for a week. Maybe that's it brings you joy for a week. And I would attribute that to enhanced ability, right? It also, if you get, with tools, it's very easy to get a million of these examples. But if you used to have a push lawnmower and then you get a driven lawnmower, sounds like true dad stuff, right? Like you have this sense of enhanced ability, right? When you move into a new house. I mean, and this is actually, this is, you can now drive to work. Let's say you were taking the bus and now you can drive to work, right? You have this you've upgraded something about your experience. You've brought a source that brings convenience and a higher capability. So that generates a sense of well-being. And being aware of, say, this and the prior source allows you to navigate or anticipate what the consequential outcomes are from the decisions we make, right? And so you might make a decision to buy something that's fun, and that's in the hedonistic category, but then there are things you can buy that'll give you this enhanced capability, and then that's in that more transcendental, which is also ephemeral. So it will wane over time. You'll get used to your new life or your new capabilities, your new level. You'll get used to it. And then you'll need to continue to find more upgrades. It's a lot like a video game. And then you'll feel that sense of well-being again. But, if you're choosing between, I don't know, I'm trying to find something hedonistic to buy, like a bigger screen TV. No, that can give you a sense of upgrade. Or, something that doesn't really give you a sense of upgrade, but you wanted to buy. Like a collector's item. Actually, when you think about it, even collecting stuff might give you a sense of you're upgrading your collection. Whatever. Anyway, that's an important source. That's actually a source of well-being that we should understand. Now, I think you can actually also orient yourself to align both of those with purpose, right? So you can get things that upgrades you on your deliberate choices towards that end goal, and then you can really orient your life toward these choices that maximize a sense of well-being if you were to combine these. Another very important, and actually probably the most accessible for every human being source of well-being, and you cannot have a list without this one, is the well-being that comes from feeling connected to others, right? So I actually used to run these experiments where I would be in a certain mental state of well-being, and then I'll seek out a good conversation with a human to test this connectivity thing. A good conversation where you feel really connected and aligned, and there's you understand each other, and there's low viscosity of communication, right? You understand each other very fluidly. And then you feel great for hours, and being connected, having good conversations, helping someone, getting mentored by someone, mentoring someone, being connected is a very important source of well-being. And it's so accessible, right? Like we can all put effort into doing that. And there's lots of studies on this one, right? And I've observed that it's actually a good way to modulate whatever state you're in. I'll give you an example, like the enemy's isolation, right? So I'm isolated a lot in this basement. And whenever it gets to me, if I go to the office and I chat with students and I work on some research with some students, I'm instantly better. Indeed, doing this video, me having the sensation that I'm connecting with someone and I'm sharing something of value, which is very interesting. It can actually work in a one-sided way, which is crazy. But anyway, it's probably better with a two-sided conversation. Anyway, but even this video is going to enhance my sense of well-being. I did a podcast Monday, and my whole day was like a little crummy. Then I did the podcast with a really good host. We were just chatting. We were talking about nerdy things like old computers. Sense of well-being went up. So that's a really important. It's a very important source, and it has this kind of thing where it's like there's no like you're either moving in one direction or the other. It's weird. So like if you're not connected and you're not exercising connection with people, you will gradually become less and less well. And if you're doing it, you'll gradually become more and more well. And it's not all interactions. Of course, it's high quality ones. And high quality just meaning you're communicating with someone, you feel connected. You feel like you're understanding each other, you're solving a problem together, etc. You're helping, you're being helped. That's crazy, but that's it, right? So those are the three. So I promised three, and then one that's not really a source, but an interesting observation. So the three were progress toward a goal that's high purpose defined by choice and deliberation, the emergence of purpose that comes from choice and deliberation. So progress toward something you choose and are deliberate about. That's one source. Second source comes from the sensation of enhanced ability. So it's learning a new skill, right? Learning to swim, let's say, and then going on your first trip where you're swimming, or getting a new backpack, something simple like that, or a new computer, or something that allows you, discovering a new tool that can help you be more productive, Myca. All that's an important one. And then the connectingness to others, that's really key. And so those are actually the three primary transcendent sources of well-being. And then the interesting side point is it'll always wane. I mentioned this, it wanes. All of those sources wane. So it's a practice. Well-being is a practice. It's not something you arrive at. And you may have heard this before, but I cannot think of any well of well-being that I have right now in an indelible way at the age of 39. Like, you know, a promotion is going to be good, but it will wane. Like the well-being that you get from that will wane, and then you'll need to identify that next thing. And I just resign to that. I feel like we fight this in the human psyche. We feel like we can achieve. The whole religion of Buddhism comes with this tenet that you can achieve some state of permanence with well-being. I don't believe it exists. I believe it's an illusion. It's a psychological illusion to the human condition to think that we will arrive at well-being and it's a place we can stay and live. We always have to be traveling. We have to nomadically traverse life to identify well-being on the journey. You know what I mean? And so that's what I got, right? I really look forward to and hope I develop more insights as I hit 50, 60, 70, 80 to the end. But that's what I've observed and have found to be durable as mental models for some of the most important questions in life. So thanks for listening. And with that, I'll let you go off to find and choose and deliberately do that next thing for which purpose emerges. Awesome. Anyway, thanks. Thanks, guys.